The smell of rain hadn't yet left the soil when Jesse Cole first saw her. She was bent over his porch rail, scrubbing dried blood from the grain with a wire brush and a half-empty bucket. Her hair was tied in a fraying cloth, her dress clinging to her ankles from the storm that passed 2 nights ago. She worked like she was angry at the wood. Jesse had hired her from a note on the saloon board. Laundry, dishes, floors. No funny business. Ask for Mary. Town edge. That's all it said. He hadn't expected her to show up on time. Or barefoot. She hadn't said much when she arrived. Just nodded, took the coin he offered, and got to work. That was 3 mornings ago. Now she was outside again. Sleeves rolled up to her elbows, face streaked with sweat and ash from the stove fire. He watched from the doorway, arms crossed, not sure if he should offer water or stay out of her way. "You don't have to scrub that hard," he finally said. Mary didn't look up. "Some stains don't lift unless you mean it." The brush rasped. The wind barely moved. Jesse ran a cattle line mostly alone. A few hands came and went, but the house hadn't seen a woman's care in years. Not since before his brother went off chasing gold and never came back. Jesse lived like most men around these hills. Quiet, rough, and forgetting what softness looked like. She had brought it back in strange ways. The chipped plates were lined now, not stacked. The lantern glass was clean. The porch didn't creak when he stepped out anymore. But what stayed with him was the way she moved. Fast, silent, practiced, like someone used to disappearing before being seen. He watched her scrub until the bristles bent. "You hungry?" he asked. She paused. Just enough for him to see the hesitation in her shoulders. "I don't eat where I work." He tilted his head. "Who says I'm offering a meal on the clock?" She looked at him then. Really looked. There was something in her face that didn't match the rest of her. Her eyes were too knowing. Her mouth too tired. She looked young, but she'd lived years past her age. "I'll bring stew," he said, and turned back inside before she could answer. The bowl stayed untouched on the porch rail. That evening, after she left, Jesse saddled his mare and followed at a distance. He told himself it wasn't spying. He just wanted to know if she walked all the way to town. Maybe offer a ride. Maybe see if she needed help. But when she turned off the road, away from town, into the trees near Miller's old hunting shed, his gut twisted. She didn't go far, just past the ridge. The trail led to a hollow, half hidden by brush and bramble. He slowed the horse and watched from behind a rock outcrop. She ducked beneath a rotted plank nailed between 2 trees, barely a shelter, let alone a roof, and disappeared inside. Then he heard it. A child's cough. Then another. Then a voice, small, trying not to sound scared, said, "Mama." Jesse held his breath. Mary's voice, soft but firm, came through the dusk. "I'm here." More rustling. Little shadows moved behind the slats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She was living in the woods, with 5 children. No man, no shoes, and she'd been using the money he gave her to keep them alive. Jesse swallowed something hard and bitter that rose in his chest. He turned the horse around, slow and silent, and rode home with his jaw clenched and the sky black above him. The next morning, he didn't mention what he'd seen. When she arrived, she found a loaf of bread and a jar of beans on the porch beside the bucket. She didn't say thank you, but he noticed she took both when she left. And that night, he saddled the mare again, not to follow, but to leave a blanket near the edge of the woods. He figured if she needed it, she'd find it, and if she didn't, well, he'd leave another anyway. Jesse Cole stood in front of the general store, fingering the callus on his thumb, while the townsfolk argued over the price of cornmeal and whispers about an outlaw gang passing near Carson's Bluff. No one mentioned Mary. No one even knew she was cleaning up at his ranch. And Jesse wasn't in a rush to share it. He watched the sheriff lean on the porch post, chewing the end of a reed. Sheriff Dobbs was the kind of man who knew everyone's business and still managed to act surprised when someone got shot. Jesse knew better than to draw attention. But that didn't stop the guilt. Mary came every morning before sunrise, cleaned until her fingers were raw, took the pay without looking up. and vanished into the woods with her sack of coin and whatever he left out that day. Sometimes food, sometimes firewood, once even a cracked lantern. She never asked for more, never once complained. But Jessie noticed her limp on the third morning. Barely there. She shifted her weight off her left foot when she walked. He saw her press her hand to her ribs once, slow and careful, when she thought no one was looking. He didn't ask. He just left a tin of balm with the evening bread. She took it, but that night he couldn't sleep. He kept hearing that small voice, "Mama," then 5 more words that clung to him like a burr. He cried after the thunder. Someone was scared out there. A child. Maybe more than one. The next morning, Jessie set down the broom and turned when she arrived. She barely looked at him, arms already rolling up her sleeves. "You don't have to work today," he said quietly. She froze. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "I don't take charity," she said. "I'm offering a break. Sit a while." "You're limping." She didn't sit. She moved past him straight to the bucket, picked up the rag, dipped it. He watched the water darken as she scrubbed the already clean table. "I know," he said softly. Her hands stopped. "I followed you. That first night." The rag dropped. Mary stood straight. Her jaw clenched. For the first time, her eyes flashed with fear. "No, not fear. Shame. They're not yours if that's what you think," she whispered. "Not in blood. But they're mine." Jessie didn't move. "I'm not here to judge you," he said. You're walking miles, barefoot, to clean my floor, so 5 little ones can sleep under broken wood." She turned away, wiping her face quickly. "You'll lose your neighbors," she said, voice flat. "They see me coming here every day. They'll think things." Jessie gave a bitter laugh. "They already think things." She didn't smile. He stepped closer. "You're not doing anything wrong. And those kids, they need more than scraps. I can help. I didn't ask. I'm offering." Silence settled like dust in the rafters. She looked at the floor. "I had a sister once," she said finally. "She left her babies with me. Said she'd come back after 2 days. That was winter. 2 years ago. I kept waiting." Jessie felt the crack inside her voice. It wasn't loud, but it split the air wide open. He didn't say sorry, didn't reach out, just nodded once. That day, she left earlier than usual. The next morning, she didn't come at all. Jessie waited on the porch with coffee and a biscuit going cold. Noon passed. Evening settled in with long shadows. He saddled his mare. When he reached the hollow, the shelter was empty. Blanket gone. Ken's gone. Everything. But beside a rock, there was a small scrap of cloth, folded twice. Inside, 2 coins and a tiny, carved figure. A horse, no longer than a finger, whittled from a peach pit. It was his. Something he lost years ago. Something from when his brother was still alive. Something he hadn't seen since the war. He stared at it a long while. That night, he built a fire in the woods and waited. When the wind shifted, he heard them again. 5 soft footsteps. Barely a whisper. She hadn't run. She just moved deeper. Jessie stood. "You can stay closer," he said into the trees. "I've got a barn. Dry. Warm. There's hay. You don't have to talk. You don't have to clean." A pause. Then her voice, from the dark. "Why?" He swallowed. "Because I'd rather be a man they whisper about than a man who lets children sleep on dirt." The woods said nothing. But in the morning, she was back on the porch, wearing shoes. Jessie sat on the edge of the porch that night, arms resting on his knees, watching the sky shift from gold to ash. The barn door was shut, but faint noises drifted out, soft giggles, the clatter of a spoon on tin, the low hum of a woman singing not for performance, but to settle the air. It was the first time his ranch had sounded alive in years. Still, he couldn't relax, because things like this, peace, warmth, the tiny laughter of children, didn't last long out here. The first sign came with the deputy. A crunch of gravel under hooves, too quick for a neighborly visit. Jessie stood before the man even dismounted. Deputy Harlan McGraw tipped his hat with more suspicion than respect. "Evenin', Jesse." "Harlan." He got straight to it. "Folk in town say you've got a woman holed up here. One with too many mouths and too little name." Jesse didn't answer. "They say she's been seen creeping into your barn before dawn. That she's hidin' something." "What did you come here to ask, Harlan?" Jesse said evenly. The deputy leaned back on his saddle, boots creaking. "You know the county's got rules about vagrants. Any squatter with no claim, no husband, no money. She can be brought in for questioning." "Brought in by who?" "By me, if need be." Jesse stepped down off the porch. Slowly, like you'd approach a skittish horse. "She ain't a vagrant. She's helping, cleaning, taking pay. That's legal last I checked." "You checked the part about harboring minors in unsanitary quarters?" Harlan drawled. Jesse's jaw twitched. "I've seen that barn," the deputy added. "Barely holds your mare, let alone a woman and 5 kids. She's got a name. Mary. That don't make her safe. She's safer here than where she came from." Harlan studied him, eyes narrowing. "You know how fast things can turn out here, Jesse. You bring in strays, folks start wondering what kind of man you are. One whisper leads to a committee. A committee leads to a rope. That hung between them like smoke." Jesse didn't flinch. "She stays," he said. Deputy McGraw sighed and turned his horse. "You were always the quiet kind, Jesse," he muttered. "But sometimes, quiet men get buried fastest." When the dust settled, Jesse didn't go inside. He just walked to the barn. He tapped once. Mary opened the door half an inch. Eyes wary, a baby clinging to her leg. He held up a loaf of bread and a small jar of salve. "They're starting to talk," he said gently. She said nothing. "Maybe tomorrow you stay inside, just for a few days. I'll make it look like you moved on." She looked at her feet. "Wouldn't be the first time," she said. He didn't answer. That night, he sat on his porch with a shotgun resting across his lap. And just before midnight, he saw it, the flicker of fire beyond the ridge. Not smoke, not accident, a signal. He stood slowly. There were more. 3 spaced like markers. Someone was scouting. Jesse doused his own lantern, unhitched his mare, rode up to the ridgeline under the moon. There, in the valley beyond, torches moved in a slow circle. Men on horses, riders watching something, not just a scouting party. Too many. He counted at least 15 before they vanished into the tree line. He turned back fast, mind racing. At dawn, he saddled up again and rode to town. The general store was quieter than usual. Whispers paused when he walked in. Sheriff Dobbs looked up from behind a crate. "Rough night?" he asked. Jesse didn't waste time. "Have you heard anything about movement near the ridge?" Dobbs scratched his beard. "Just Harlan running his mouth. Something about you sheltering a bunch of half-wild kids and their outlaw mama." Jesse clenched his jaw. "You gonna do something?" Dobbs tilted his head. "About what? A few fires on a hill? Might be cowboys' tracking game. Or might be scouts from the reservation. You think someone's after you? I think someone's watching." "Then I'd get ready," Dobbs said. "Because folks out here don't like surprises. Especially ones with too many mouths and not enough English." Jesse rode home fast. Mary was already outside the barn, children behind her, bundled up. Her eyes met his before he spoke. "You saw them too?" he asked. She nodded. "My people don't light fires to stay warm," she said. "They light them to mark who's owed." "Owed?" She didn't explain, just turned to go back inside. He followed. "What did you do, Mary?" Her voice was low, flat. "I took something that wasn't mine, but I didn't steal it. I saved it." He waited. "They want me to give it back," she whispered. "Give what back?" She glanced over her shoulder. The smallest child, a boy no older than 4, sat playing with a wooden block. "That one," she said. Jesse's heart knocked once against his ribs. "You mean?" "I pulled him out of a raid," she said, eyes glassy. "There was fire, screaming. I don't even know if he's mine by blood. But I couldn't leave him. And now they've come? They want their own." Outside, a crow screamed over the fields. Jesse stepped closer. "Then let them come," he said. "You don't understand. There's more than one tribe watching. That child doesn't belong to any one of them. That makes him all their problem." Jesse took a deep breath. "What do we do?" Mary swallowed. "Pray they don't come at night." The barn was quiet that night. Not with peace, but the kind of silence that made the air feel heavy. Mary stood by the window, her body stiff, holding the smallest child against her shoulder. The others lay curled in the hay behind her, too tired to be scared. Jesse paced near the door, shotgun resting against the wall, oil lamp burning low. "They haven't moved in," he murmured, peering through the slats. "Just circling, watching." Mary didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the dark horizon. Then the baby stirred, not from fear but recognition. He sat up, looked out the window, then pointed. "Horse," he said softly. Mary moved fast, setting him down, stepping outside before Jesse could stop her. "Mary!" But she raised her hand, and for the first time, Jesse saw something different in her posture. Not fear, familiarity. A single rider was approaching, not with menace but slowly, almost ceremonial. He was older, hair tied with sinew, a long red sash across his chest. No weapon drawn, just watching her with unreadable eyes. Mary stepped forward and knelt, not out of submission, but reverence. The man dismounted and stood across from her in the dust. Then a single word passed between them in Apache. Jesse stepped out of the barn slowly, shotgun lowered but present. The elder man noticed but didn't flinch. He looked from Jesse to Mary, then to the child peeking through the slats. He said something else, low, firm, respectful. Mary responded, softer, and her voice cracked near the end. The elder turned, walked to his horse, reached into the saddlebag. Jesse tensed, but the man only pulled out a small, tattered blanket. He walked over and placed it gently in the child's arms. The boy looked up at him, confused. The elder didn't touch him, just gave a slight nod, turned, and rode back into the darkness. Mary stood there a long time after he vanished, then finally turned back toward Jesse, eyes wet. "What did he say?" Jesse asked. "That the child's real mother died in that fire," Mary whispered. "But she was his niece, blood of their blood. They thought he burned too. He didn't. I found him." Jesse looked toward the ridge where the firelight still danced. They were never coming to take him? They were coming to see what kind of man kept him safe. The next morning, Jesse found a circle of horse tracks outside the barn. But no damage, no threats. Just a single eagle feather left on the gatepost. Mary came out with a pail of water, face tired but lighter. "They won't come again," she said quietly. Jesse looked down at the feather, picked it up. "Why leave this?" She took it from his hand and tied it gently to the barn's beam. "They're saying we're not alone anymore," she said. "They're saying he belongs now, to all of us." Jesse looked inside the barn, at the small boy sleeping between two of his sisters, one hand on a wooden horse Jesse had carved the day before. For the first time since it all began, Jesse let out a long breath, not from fear, but from the quiet kind of relief that came after standing too long in the dark. He turned to Mary. "We'll fix the roof today," he said. She nodded. "And tomorrow?" He looked over the land, the barn, the tracks fading into the prairie. "Tomorrow we stay." Spring came slow that year, the kind that crept in, soft and shy, like it wasn't sure it belonged. The prairie bloomed in patches. Nothing loud, just shy wildflowers and soft new green. The barn roof no longer leaked, and the children knew where the extra blankets were stacked. The baby had grown enough to toddle, chasing the chickens in bare feet, laughing without fear. Jesse watched them from the porch one morning, a chipped mug in his hand, steam rising. Mary stepped out behind him, her hair damp, sleeves rolled. She smelled of bread and firewood. She always did now. "You gonna say it?" she asked, teasing gently. Jesse didn't look at her, just nodded toward the field. "They ain't visitors anymore. The kids weren't blood. They weren't kin. But they filled the place in Jesse's world that had been empty for too long. Mary came and sat beside him, quiet. They didn't touch, they didn't need to. They remember, she said finally. Everything. But they sleep through the night now. And you? Mary looked at him, eyes still strong but softer now. I remember too. But not the same way. The wind shifted, brought with it the smell of ash from far-off lands, the last of winter dying. Jesse finished his coffee. They never saw the Apache again. Not the elder, not the riders who had once circled the barn. But signs came. A deer laid near the barn door with no wound. A row of stones shaped in a spiral along the creek. Smoke in the far hills, not warning smoke. Ceremony. Peace came not with declarations or speeches. Just days. Gentle, slow, ordinary days. One afternoon, Mary brought out an old wooden box. Inside were 3 faded photographs, water-damaged but still visible. One showed a man in uniform, Jesse's father. Another, a woman with dark eyes and braids, Mary's sister, maybe. The third, smudged and barely visible, was a young boy crouched in front of a teepee, holding a carved horse. Mary looked at Jesse, surprised. That's him, she whispered. Before. Jesse didn't ask how she knew, just nodded. The boy, they called him Harlan now, never asked about the riders, but he kept the eagle feather near his bed. Sometimes he touched it before he slept, just a second. Not worship, memory. Years passed like that. The town came around. Slowly. A sack of flour left on the porch. A hammer repaired by a neighbor without asking. No one asked questions about the children anymore. Not out loud. One day a letter arrived, postmarked from Missouri. It was addressed to Mr. Jesse R. Boone and family. Family. Jesse held it a while before opening. Inside was a simple note, no name. You kept what the world throws away. That makes you richer than most men I know. No signature. He folded it, placed it in the wooden box with the photos. Harlan grew tall. His voice deepened, but his kindness remained. He carved toys for other children, fixed fences without being asked, and once nursed a wounded hawk back to flight. Mary taught the girls to cook and braid, but also to ride, shoot, and read maps. She told them stories from both sides of the river, white men's books and the stories whispered in her sister's old tongue. Jesse? He stayed steady. Not loud, not bold, just present. The kind of man a place could grow around. Years later, when someone came riding through and asked about the old barn, folks in town would nod toward it with a sort of reverence. That's Boone's place, they'd say. Kids grew up good out there. Quiet kind of good. The kind you don't forget. And every so often, when the moon was low and the wind still, a horse would appear on the edge of the hill. Just one. Never closer. Then gone. As if checking in. As if remembering. And Jesse would sometimes stand at the fence, hands in his pockets, and nod once toward the horizon, like a promise had been kept.